Hey my awesome people, Hamza here and welcome back to the channel. Now in this video, let's compare the Elementor containers and the Gutenberg containers. So we'll be talking everything in between, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's get started. So for the previous 2 years, the Flexbox feature has been in development by the Elementor team to be integrated into the Elementor page builder as a way we can use to create our layouts different from the previous where we've been using sections and columns. And I've made a couple of videos on how you can get started using the Elementor Flexbox container, including in my recent course that I just released. I take you into a deeper dive on how you can get started using the Flexbox container. However, you should note that most of the Gutenberg add-ons have actually rolled out with the Flexbox container as a default standard for building websites using the Gutenberg builder. So in this video, I thought I would give it a test. So for both the Elementor container and the Gutenberg container. And what I did to test this out, I built a layout or a hero section using the Elementor container, and I tried to replicate the same using the Spectra add-ons for Gutenberg to have something like this. And guess what I got? This is how far I could go to get something that is a little bit identical to what I could build in Elementor. But before you judge the results, let's look into what it takes to actually build this using Gutenberg. So back inside our Elementor editor, what I have over here are two containers. So the first container is the one that is holding the background image and also this content over here, the text or the heading widget, and the other heading widget and the button over right here. And the second container is the one that is holding this banner right over here with an image box widget, just like you see right over here. So it's just one single widget right inside this container that I actually gave a negative margin to move up over right here to sit above the first hero container. And inside Gutenberg, this is what we could develop using Gutenberg. But before we get there, this is what I had to do to be able to achieve that. I had to first install the Astra theme, and after that I installed a separate plugin which is the Spectra add-ons for Gutenberg. When you install this add-on, then you are able to have the Flexbox containers active within Gutenberg. Without a plugin like this, Gutenberg will only enable you to create your layouts using row and columns, which is a little bit boring and doesn't allow you to be creative with your layouts. So once you install your Spectra add-on, by going to plugins, look up for Spectra, shows up over here, install it and activate it. Just imagine Spectra like an Elementor add-on by which if you install, you get extra widgets that you can use within your Gutenberg website. Once that was done, I simply had to go to pages, all pages, and then I can create a new page. For example, when I say add a new page, in this case, when I come over here, then I'm able to add a block. And inside here, there is a section now that is called Spectra, and all those blocks that are in blue are from Spectra, including the container block over here. So when I select the container, then I get this kind of option to select among the layouts that are shown over here, or the pre-made layouts over here. Of course, you can adjust and create your own layout the way you want it, just like you can do it here inside Elementor. For example, when I say add, I have these pre-selected layouts from Elementor, and I can choose among any of these and I can adjust it as well. So once you select your layout, for example, if I choose this layout, so now I can add content to any of these containers. As well, you can pull up the navigator over here, which I find really crucial when it comes to building your layouts in Gutenberg, because just like I could do it here in Elementor, for example, when I select, then I select this container. Now you see the main container is actually highlighted with a blue, and the inner containers are also highlighted with a blue once you are inside that container or once you hover over that container, which is pretty interesting. However, I don't get that option within Gutenberg. In this case, if I want to have the main container, I don't have a way to select that. So the shortcut to get the main container holding these two containers here is to use the navigator. So now I see the two containers and also the main container. And if you have the containers enabled in your Gutenberg website, you can go ahead and select the flex properties here. Justifying content, wrapping content, and all that stuff. So now you know how to get containers right within your Gutenberg website. Now let's look into how I built this hero section using Gutenberg. And I'll also tell you what challenges I faced and how you can go about them. So as you see here on our live page, I don't have a header and I also don't have a footer. And I also don't have the page name or page title displaying over here. So how do you disable that? Now, inside here in Gutenberg, you're going to come right over here to Astra settings because I have the Astra theme activated. And you're going to come over here to disable elements. Then you're able to disable the header and also disable the footer. Now that means that it will not appear for this particular page that you are editing. Second, to disable the title of the page from appearing on the live page, you just simply come over here and disable the eye. So in this case, it is active. When I click the eye, now that disables the page title from appearing on our live page, just like you see right over there. So second is now we want to select our main container, but how do we select that? Just like I told you previously, the best way to do that is to come over here to your navigator or to the list view and then select your main container. Now, this main container, which now is actually highlighted in blue after selecting it from the navigator, so we were able to add a background image. So I come here to settings, I come to the container or the block settings, which is now the container, and under style, that's where I could add the background image. And at the same time, I could add a background gradient because I wanted that these words are visible from the left-hand side. And that is the same exact thing I did here in Elementor. So by selecting our main container, under style, I added a background image, which is this over here, and also a background overlay color running from black to transparent. And I position that gradient to be running from the right hand side. So you can play around with the angle the way you want, just like you can do the same thing right over here in Gutenberg. So as per my check, I have Elementor 1 and Gutenberg 1. Inside the main container, we had to add two other containers. So the first container that is holding the text and the button, and also the other container that is simply an empty container because we wanted that this other container that is holding the text and the button is taking 25% of the page. We could do that here in Gutenberg by replicating what I had already done here in Elementor. And the first inner container or the first child container is taking 25% of the width. So I could do the same thing inside here in Gutenberg. So when I select the first container, and then now we look into the general settings, container, you see that I set that to take 25% of the width. So this 25% of the width is based on a page width that is 1200 pixels. So by default in the Astra theme, the layout width is 1200 pixels. In Elementor, it is 1140 pixels. So what I did to have the same layout or the same width of the pages matching, I had to set that my containers in Elementor are actually going to be 1200 pixels width. And that way I would get both widths matching. So after that, I had to add my blocks in the first container. So that is the first heading block, and then also the second heading block. And lastly, we had to add the button, which is this over here, just like we did in Elementor, right over there. Per my check, adding the child containers in Gutenberg, they call them blocks, and then being able to adjust the widths of these containers, that is 2, and then also being able to add our blocks or our widgets within the container or the first container that takes 25% of the width. Now I can say we have a 1 for Gutenberg and a 1 for Elementor. So a 1 for Gutenberg, a 1 for Elementor. The other hassle was to position the content in the first container to be at the top, which is this over here. So you see in Elementor, I'm able to do that. So because I wanted that this text is actually aligned at the top of the container. For example, in Elementor, I just simply select that container and then come over here to justify content. Remember, this container is running in the column direction. That's why I'm able to justify the content to be either at the top, at the center, or at the bottom. So I want it to be at the start. Now the challenge came when I wanted to do the same thing in Gutenberg. And surprisingly, the features are there, but the content wasn't able to move to the direction or to the position that I wanted. Let me show you. So back inside our Gutenberg editor, I'll select the first container. So under general settings for that container, and I come here to flex properties, which enables me to position my blocks within that container. I had to set that I want this to be in a column direction, not in a row direction, just like we set that in Elementor. And we wanted to align those items at the flex start. So this is the same setting we did within Elementor. I'll update. I will reload this. So we expect that this text moves up over right here. Nothing is moving. So even when I come and say end or the flex end, that means it will be at the bottom of the container. Then I update. I come here to the page. I update. Nothing is happening. It looks like the blocks are now only positioned at the center of the container, which is not what I actually wanted. For now, when it comes to positioning the blocks inside the container, I am sorry to say that I'm going to give Gutenberg, in this case, a 0, and the 1 for Elementor. But I'm being suspicious that there should be a small bug that is causing this error, because if the setting is there, then the blocks should be able to be positioned either at the top, at the center, or at the bottom. I would be interested to hear from Astra team what they have to say about this, or the team from Spectra what they have to say about this, or you who is watching this video, if you think there is anything I'm doing wrong, you would please let me know down in the comment box of this video. But I'm pretty sure this should be working out of the box since the option is actually available in Gutenberg. Now let's look into the content. So for this style container, I wanted that when we add our content, so for example, when I come here to the block and then I look up for the title, is it title or heading block? So it's a heading block. When I add this heading block, I should be able to select the heading tag. So in case if this is an H2, then come here to style. Then I'm able to select the typography. Then I had to set it to be in EM. And then I also had to set the weight, so like 700. I can go ahead and also play with the line height and the letter spacing. Once I'm done with that, I can add my color. It was a white color. That way I am done styling up my heading. I can add a highlight, a background, and all that stuff. So this is the block from Spectra for the heading widget or title widget. And since I'm able to have these settings in Gutenberg, just like I am able to adjust my title here in Elementor, you know, adding the title text and changing the HTML tag, and also coming to the style, being able to select the color and the typography style for that specific heading widget or for that specific widget, I think Gutenberg deserves a 1 and Elementor 1. I think it's going pretty nice. So I'm now wondering if the next project I'm going to work on should be in Gutenberg, because since Gutenberg is native in WordPress and I have to install Elementor on top of Gutenberg so that I can use Elementor in WordPress, that makes me now to start feeling like it's the right time to switch. Okay, now for the button. So how are you able to achieve this kind of button? So I simply had to add a button widget in Elementor, have our color change on hover, back inside our Gutenberg editor. So what I simply had to do here was to add a widget, a block in this case. So you can do that by coming here to add a block, then look up for button. So you get this button over here if you want to do the same thing. So here they come like dual buttons in Gutenberg, but if you come over here to the list, select the button, and then also click on the drop down icon, you can delete one of the buttons. So I simply just had to delete or remove the button. Then I can align my button to be on the left hand side. Then I can go ahead and do the styling for my button. Set the color on normal. It can be our yellow color, and then on hover you can as well set that color so that on hover you have it switch the color that you want. That is the color for the text. The same for the background. You can go ahead and set that. The border, you can go ahead and set the border radius to have the rounded corners and all that stuff. You can go ahead and also edit the text right inside the button. So in this case, if you wanted to say get started, you do that right over there. So since I'm able to style my button and also position it the way I want, just like I could do it here in the Elementor editor, I'll give Gutenberg and Elementor a 1-1. I think that is a good balance. So a 1 and a 1. So let's look into the very last container, which is this over here that is holding our banner. So in Elementor, what I did was to select that container, which I actually added just after the first container. Right under advanced margins, I unlinked all the margins and I selected the percentage option and I gave it a negative margin of 12 pixels. If I remove the negative margin, you see that this banner goes back right at the bottom, but I want it to stay negative margin, so it kind of overlaps the first container. And then right inside that container, what I did was to add another container, and inside that container, I gave it some padding of 5% all over. And then I added a widget, which is the image box widget. It comes in the free version of Elementor, so image box. Then what I did was to position my image on the right hand side. I could do that also to be on the left, so depending on how you want it to be. And then I made sure that I style that image to only take up 20% of the width, so I could make it like a 50, so but 20 looked a little bit better for me. My question was, can I achieve the same kind of design and layout using Gutenberg? Now let's go to Gutenberg. Okay, now let's pull up our navigator. Of course, in Gutenberg, they call it list view. So now we have our container, and inside that container, we have another container that is actually holding our, we would have called it an image box block, like in Elementor, it is called image box widget, but in this case, they don't have that kind of widget, but we are going to talk about that just in a minute. So first things first, with that container selected, coming over here to style, we added a margin or a negative margin of 12%. So simply also to move it up to overlap the first container. So when you come over here to our Elementor editor, I want you to notice that I have two containers. So the main container and the child container that is holding our image box widget. So this child container is the container where we added the 5% padding. So you would expect us to do the same thing in Gutenberg. So when I come over here to Gutenberg, the child container that is holding our block, if I came here to padding and I gave it 5% padding, if I update here, so it say update, then come here to our page, I reload, you're going to see that this takes up a lot of space. And I'm wondering what is the difference between the percentage in Elementor and the percentage in Gutenberg. If you know why that is happening in Gutenberg, that is taking up a lot of space here, let me know down in the comments of this video. That aside, I'm going to come back here to our editor and I'm going to simply remove everything. If you look over here on our Elementor editor, our image over here is having rounded corners, just like we did for the container itself. So we could achieve a similar thing to add rounded corners or the rounded radius to our container, but we could not do that for the image or for the image block right inside Gutenberg. So once I have the media and text block selected, you see that I'm able to choose the image size and I'm able to choose the image width. So just like we did in Elementor image box, you see that under style image width is 20%. So I could do the same thing here, image width 20%. But they don't give me options to set the image radius. I don't know whether I'm comparing apples to oranges because these are different widgets. So in this case, I'll be giving Gutenberg a 0 and Elementor a 1. Of course, I have to mention about the responsiveness. So when I come over here, for example, to the mobile device, you can go ahead and style up how these elements are going to appear. So for example, this is going to be 3, and at the same time, if I select this child container and I go to flex properties and I want to position this to be in the center or at the start, still that is not working. One thing you have to note is that for the widgets that you can adjust their settings on different devices, they will have a little icon like this. But for those widgets that you are not able to adjust their styles on mobile devices, they will not have that option. For example, if I want to change the image width on mobile, I cannot do that for mobile specifically. So if I change that here, it will also be changed on the desktop version. So that is a downside. However, if I go to Elementor and for example the image box, and for example I come over here to the image width on mobile, I change that to a 50. Great. So I really don't want to say that this is not possible in Gutenberg because these are different widgets, but I want to imagine if we had an image box widget specifically for this kind of thing, which I think this widget was the intention. I hope we would have had this kind of feature so that we can adjust the width of this image on mobile devices. So let me select the container that is having the background and come to style. I'll unlink this and make it like a 30 at the top. And actually, let me just make it a 30 all over. Let me see if we can now select the whole container and move it to the top. Yes, I can move and position my container on the different devices. So that way I can give it a 1-1, but when it comes to certain elements within the container itself, just like the media and text block, some things I'm not able to adjust on the responsive mode. So I'll give Gutenberg a 0 and Elementor a 1. So let's look at the countdown. How much do we have for Elementor and Gutenberg? This is turning out to be a hard one. Anyway, that's it all from me in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment box below, what you think about Gutenberg or Spectra add-ons in this case. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good time and see you in the next one.